Hi there, it's me, Jordan Van Haslo. Welcome to Jordan Van Haslo and Friends live on Hot 702.5 FM Las Vegas. Let's get on with the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Showtime with Jordan Van Haslo and Friends, right here on Hot 702.5 FM Las Vegas. I am so excited to introduce you to a new friend. He's an actor who has been a part of our lives for so long. You know him from Little House on the Prairie. And we're going to all get to know each other very well. So without further ado, listeners, I'm happy to welcome Dean Butler. Hello, Dean.
Jordan. I've been waiting for this opportunity.
How are you?
Good. I'm talking to you from Studio City, California, about for the geography, about a mile from Universal Studios, and been here in Southern California since the late 1970s. So I'm a SoCal guy, but raised in Northern California. But I'm a SoCal guy now. I know you're a New Yorker. You air in Las Vegas. It's a transcontinental experience.
Indeed. Where in NoCal are you from?
So I grew up in the Oakland, Berkeley area in a little community called Piedmont.
Okay.
It's just adjacent to Oakland and a hop, skip, and a jump from Berkeley. And this is a multi-generational hometown for me. So I'm like the third generation of my family to spend some growing up years in this little town called Piedmont, which is really a bedroom community for a lot of men. Generationally, you commuted to their offices in San Francisco every day. So that's where I grew up. Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time in NoCal. One of my dearest friends grew up in Marin County.
Oh, okay.
So I've spent a lot of time up there. So how did you come down to Los Angeles?
So, it's interesting here you talk about spending time in Marin. So I had done a movie of the week for CBS in 1977 called Forever, which was based on the Judy Blume novel.
Can I tell you, that book changed my life.
Really?
I loved it. I was in middle school, junior high school, and I was maybe 12 or 13, and I loved that book so much. And I remember that movie anyways, tell me about that.
So anyway, we shot this movie in Marin County, and what's the Mill Valley was really the sort of the centerpiece of the movie. The director was a man named John Cordy, who had become famous doing won an Emmy for a movie he did for, I believe, I'm not sure which network it was from, but it's the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. He had done that, and then another movie called Farewell to Manzanar, and an Academy Award winning documentary called Who Are the DeBolts and How Did They Get 19 Kids. But anyway, he did this love story in Marin County. So I was cast out of the Bay Area opposite Stephanie Zimbalist to do this little movie of the week. And after it aired, I came to Los Angeles, and Stephanie was kind enough to introduce me to her wonderful agent, a woman named Ina Bernstein, who was like the grande dame of the television department at ICM. She signed me, and it was a period of a year or so before anything really happened. There were lots of meetings, and really the thing that happened, the significant thing in my life, was the Little House on the Prairie interviews, and that sort of changed my life, Jordan. I mean, that program has been the centerpiece of my creative life, despite the other things that I've done. But there's nothing as significant as Little House in my creative life.
Absolutely.
So
Wait, so how old were you when you did Forever? Like, I want to get to the nitty gritty. How old were you
yeah, so I
when you
was
did Forever?
21, 20, I think maybe 22, 21, 22, something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Did did you start out like were you like a theater kid? Like did you start out doing like were you
in
always yeah.
high school, high school theater and then college theater. I went to college at University of the Pacific, which is up in Stockton, California. So, Central California, very good theater department at the time. Did that, did a summer at ACT in San Francisco, or a summer at ACT. And then I started, I sort of put myself out there to do commercials, and that was the core of the business in San Francisco at that time. And there was always a show shooting there. So the show that was sort of home based in San Francisco at that time was the wonderful Carl Malden, Michael Douglas police drama, The Streets of San Francisco. And
Yeah.
so that show is where most young actors, if you were looking to get Taft-Hartley and be eligible to join SAG, and you were in San Francisco, in all likelihood, that was the show that you were going to get cast in to make that happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and Streets was great show, and Michael Douglas and Carl Malden were awesome together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Was it but
yeah.
like was that what like I guess I'm just trying to ask like is that what you like always wanted to do? Like were you like a little kid like, "Oh my God, I want to be in the movies. I want to be on television." Or like how did
Um, yeah, I think that's interesting. So as a small kid, I was really the tech geek. I was
Okay.
that kid in school who was running projectors and turning on and off lights in the theater, and I was that kid. It wasn't until and and like so many kids, Jordan, and I think most kids and adults looking back at their youth can relate to this. You really want to find a place in your life where you can be seen and heard.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing for a kid. You need some validation that you are accepted for being, for being good at something. So, for most guys, it's sports. For other guys, it's academics. The theater was not the place where, most guys found that. But I followed a girl into the theater in my junior year and to do a production of Once Upon a Mattress.
Oh,
I,
I love that
joined.
show.
Yeah, I know it's a great show. And I joined the chorus and, had a wonderful time being on the stage. And that really tipped it for me. But I think more than the creative expression of that. I mean, I wasn't like bursting at the seams to communicate something. I think I was really bursting at the seams to be accepted. I mean, that
Yeah.
that was really to be accepted and respected for doing something well. And I think it's funny, that was the place where sort of public speaking and being on the stage was the place where I found some center of acceptance with my peers, which was huge for me. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I think we all need that in some form or fashion. And it comes in many different ways, but for me, that was the thing. Um, and so I did the high school plays that were offered, and then I went off to the University of the Pacific and studied in the theater department and the communications department. I was sort of interested in radio and in the theater and all of that. I've always been sort of a hybrid of the technology and the creative expression.
Yeah.
Those two things have always interested me. So when I was all the work I've done, I have been always at least as interested in what the cameraman was doing, what the A1, the audio recordist was doing, what was happening in the writer's room, the editor on the, in the editor's office, on the re-recording stage. I was as fascinated with all of that as with what I was doing. And if in truth be told, I was probably more fascinated with that because what I picked up on early in the game is that, actors, Jordan, are usually the last ones hired onto a production. All the creative work is done. They hire the actor, shoot the project, and then it is edited and put together. The amount of time that precedes the hiring of the actor and the amount of time in a project that follows the actor being through is a much larger body of time than the time that the actor spends on the set doing whatever it is that they're doing. And
100%. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Because you think like, because actors are usually so like self-conscious and like, oh my God. And it's like the thing I find that's so not unique, but like the thing that I find that's so like, oh my goodness, is like the actors are the ones who are the most self-conscious about everything. But when you really think about how productions happen, the actors are like literally the most like interchangeable often, unless they like have a big name or whatever.
Right. I mean, there's the difference. You touched on the fundamental difference between professional work for an actor on screen versus professional work for an actor on stage. In New York, you live in New York. You've been in the Broadway theater. I mean, I don't know if you've been acted in the Broadway theater. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. I have, and someone's going to be in every part when the curtain goes up at 8, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, yes, people come to see if there's a star at a part. People want to see the star, but even if the cover goes on, it's going to be a great show. It's always a great show because the talent level is incredibly high. But on film, actors are not interchangeable once they're cast. I mean, it's rare that a character can be played by two different actors, and it certainly has happened, but generally it's about the face. And so for some reason an actor goes down, if an actor gets sick, if an actor for whatever reason can't be there, either they shoot around that actor or that character is eliminated and another character is put in the place of that so that the show can continue.
Right.
So it's and they're both great traditions and both amazing. And I'm not sure where we started with this. I sort of down this tangent of stage versus working on film. Oh, I know. Okay, so we were talking about the amount of time. Now, on the stage, it's an actor's medium. When the curtain goes up, the actors are in charge. I mean, there's a lot of,
Well, that's what they say, right? But that's what they say, right? Like film is a director's medium.
Yes.
Television is a writer's medium, and stage is the actor's medium.
Yeah, it is. And I think, and only in the sense that, I mean, look, the writing, the directing on the stage is very important, but in the theater,
but once the actors are on stage, like
correct,
whatever happens. Whatever happens, happens.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And and it goes the way it goes. Whereas on film, you do take two if it doesn't go the way the director wants it to be, and the director or the producer ultimately has control of the cut. So the performance is being crafted later by an editor, a director, and a producer. And so, you hope you do a good job and that you're coming across well, and so that the editor wants to cut to you. But you are not in control of that process. The average actor is not in control of that process. And I found that to be, it was much more later in my career when I came back to that side of it, and nowhere near on that scale. But when I realized that I could be in the position to be that blank screen to the end person as a producer, that was really exciting to me because I could shape the content.
Yeah, that's what I don't know if you ever read The Kid Stays in the Picture. It was Bobby Evans. But
I know the story. Yeah.
but like he
Yeah.
says that in the book, he was like, because he started out as like an actor, and he was like, why
Right.
do I want to be a crummy actor when I can like run the whole
Like be
show?
king of the
Like
world. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
completely.
What a great voice he had. I mean, when he in that movie, when he's sitting there narrating, talking about Ally McGraw, it's like you can taste it.
Yeah.
It's just really, it's pretty hot. No,
Yeah.
he was a really interesting producer and very effective.
Yeah. So when you were first starting out, like, so it sounds like you weren't starting out in the intention of being an actor. It sounds to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me that you just kind of wanted to just be in the center of the industry or the biz, as we used to call it.
I wanted to be a participant. I wanted to be in the game somewhere. I knew that. I think, on high school dates, going to the theater and, taking a date to see Robert Redford in 3 Days of the Condor, or, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, or The Sting, or, any of those movies. When you're a blonde haired, blue eyed guy and you look at Robert Redford, you think to yourself, ignorance is bliss, obviously. You think, I can do that.
Uh-huh.
And, the reality is, most people can't do that. It is a magical thing that happens with the camera and an individual's being that either hits the lens or it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's very. Jimmy Stewart talked about that in a biography, or in some missive that he wrote about the industry, that the camera either likes you or it doesn't. And it doesn't matter how hard you work at it. Either the camera gets you or it doesn't. And I think the camera has this magical ability to look into people's souls. And, it starts with a willingness on the part of the actor to be seen. You have to be willing to expose yourself through your eyes, which is really where that exposure happens in front of a camera. It's in
Mm-hmm.
your eyes that looks into your very soul. And if you're willing to show that, if you're accessible to that, some really nice things can happen. And then you just have to allow yourself to go where you go. I mean, I think, there's such a difference between acting in front of a camera with the lens 3 feet away from your face and standing on a stage where the closest audience is 15, 20 feet away from you. It's a very different thing.
Yeah.
You can hide on a stage. You can hide in a performance on the stage. You cannot, or it's much harder to hide in a performance in front of the camera. You really
Yeah.
have to be, you have to be all the way in to do that.
Which do you
Um,
prefer?
well, I think I much prefer. I mean, what I prefer and what I think I'm probably most effective at, and I think I'm probably, as an actor, more effective on the stage than I am in front of the camera. I think there's a magical thing that happens between an audience and a performer on the stage, where the audience really becomes part of the performance. And if you feel them, you can, you become part of this communication that's
Yeah,
happening.
it's like the instant reaction
Yeah,
versus
yeah,
you're just
yeah,
standing in like a sound stage with like 30 people around you and they're just like
yeah,
all there to do their particular
yeah,
job versus yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
understand that.
it's the editor that creates the rhythm. On the
Mm-hmm.
stage, that interaction is instantaneous, as you say, that communication is instantaneous. And as the actor, you are available to that, you feel that, and you bounce it back at them. And that makes for a very successful experience, as opposed to being on the soundstage, as we're talking about, and the editor is going to build the rhythm based on the reaction of the people based on his or her sensibility.
Because you're not there. You're not yeah, you're not in it. Like, so this past weekend, I've been producing this music video, and it was just so funny because like I came, because producers are there to buy the snacks. And so I brought the snacks and I was just sitting watching everything, right? And I was watching everything.
Producers are there to buy the producers are there to do whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I was there, but I was like sitting. So like it was on the campus of Purchase College in Purchase, New York. And they built the whole soundstage out. They built it out, like with flats and like everything was painted, blah, blah, blah. And so, I got there and I'm just sitting, and the talent is this woman, and she was in all body paint and such. And it was just so funny to watch because she's just lying there in her position, and the director and the cameraman and everyone was just talking over her for like 20 minutes, and she's just there just waiting. And I thought, like, oh my God, this has to be miserable for like an actor, because you're just like literally just standing there, and then they go action, and then you hit your mark and you do something for like 10 seconds, and they're like cut, and then they all start talking, and they start talking. You're just like sitting there. So I just think so I understand exactly what you're saying.
I think it's really such a craft to be able to sort of wind yourself up as the performer. I mean, if you're talking about working on a soundstage, you wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, and you have to stay. You can't wring yourself out while you're waiting. You have to manage that energy very carefully in a very intentional way, and be ready to spill it when the slate comes in, or when you hear action from the director, and then you're on. But you're spending, in the course of a normal day, if you're heavily involved, depending on whatever it is that you're doing, you might actually be performing for 4, 5, 6 minutes during the day. And you're spending all the rest of that time rehearsing, waiting, learning lines, but just keeping yourself ready for that 6 minutes when the camera's rolling and they're actually capturing something that you're doing. It takes so much discipline to do that and do it well.
It almost sounds like, to me, I'm a musician, so like I perform live. I'm a singer, but it almost sounds to me that acting in films is almost scarier than acting on stage, because when you're on stage, it's just you just go out and do it, whereas you, like you just said, you have to like hold all that in until they say action, and then you have to just go there, even though you've been on set for 10 hours.
Yeah. And then when you're done doing it, you really have no control over what's going to happen with it. You give that, whatever that performance is, you give it, and all that film gets loaded into an Avid project or a Premiere project or whatever. And, you're looking at multi-camera stuff perhaps, and you've got an editor who's making decisions to create something that, that obviously, in the case of a music video, it's probably about focusing on whoever that person is, whose song it is, whose performance it is. And then everybody else is there to serve that. But you're going to serve that at the discretion of an editor and a producer, ultimately. And you really have nothing to do with it. Once it's been, they want you to leave. They want you out of there. They don't want to hear from you unless they need you again. If they need you to come in and re-record a vocal thing, or they need to reshoot, and then they need to get you back and you need to do it again. But really, generally, once actors are done with the principal photography, they go away and their work is finished. And that part, I mean, that's great for some people. And I know actors who love that they can completely focus their lives on what's happening in that 6 minutes a day on the soundstage. And then when they leave, they go off and do something else, whatever that thing is. If you're a person who thinks about the outcome, the final outcome, that's a little more problematic.
Yeah.
Because you have no say. It's an interesting, there are two different things. Generally
because it's like sort of like someone's like pulling your soul, and it's like now they have control over it.
Yeah. They've got your soul. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of an actor are you? Are you like, all right, I did my job. Now I'm getting my card. I'm going off to the next gig. Or are you the person who's like, biting your fingernails? Like, oh my God, what is this finished project going to look like?
Yeah. No, I'm the one I'm the guy who's biting his fingernails. Thank you very much. Yeah. You wonder, did you do it right? Did you do it well enough? Did you, all of those things. And look, I think probably most actors probably think about those things, but some people are really much better at compartmentalizing that anxiety, and they can put it away and just move on. Or maybe that's just like the best part of their performance is the ability to make you believe they don't care. And they just walk away. I mean, at some point, you can't do this and not care about what you're doing. But there are people who are able to compartmentalize that anxiety so that you don't feel like they're worrying about it so much. And good for them. And if that's real, really good for them, because it's wasted energy. It's not going to get you anywhere unless you have a producing title in the project, which gives you the power to go into the editing room and make suggestions, or have most actors have no, they are not invited to have an opinion. I would go into the editing room in Little House just to watch the process, and the editor said to me, I really love this guy, he was great, his name was John Leffler. John would say, you can watch, but the first time you open your mouth, you're out of here.
I mean,
just you do not ask a question. Ask no question. Just watch. You can watch the process, but you're not invited to have an opinion in this room.
So in that type of environment where you're like, oh shit, I should have stayed below the line.
I don't know that I think in retrospect, looking at it, I think if I had recognized that reality sooner, I think I probably would have focused behind the camera earlier in my professional life. In all candor, I think that's probably what I would have done, because I just recognize that that's where the juice is. It's, actors get an enormous amount of credit for the thing because they're the faces of a project. But if
it's successful, only if it's successful.
Well, but on the flip side of that, Jordan, if it sucks, they take much more blame than they should take too.
This is true. True.
Yeah, you get much more credit than you deserve when it's good, because there are a lot of people who make it good, and when it's bad, you take a lot more blame than you should take, because it takes a lot of people to make something bad.
Yeah,
and so it's an unreal place to be. And look, people may strenuously disagree with what I'm saying here, but this is my experience with this. And I would much rather be in the position as a person, Jordan, I would much rather be in the position where I have some responsibility for the outcome that's really mine, that I am obligated to, as opposed to
I specifically, my responsibility was to do this particular task, and I did this task to my ability.
Yeah. I mean, as an actor, you do that quick task, and you just have to give it away. And if you're the producer on stage buying snacks, you want to get snacks that people really like and hope that people are happy. And we all have our jobs to do, but generally producers have a more overarching they have a more overarching involvement in the
Oh,
production.
totally,
And that's,
totally.
yeah. It's fun.
100%. I just said that jokingly because that's that. I don't know if you know that. Are you a Christopher Guest fan? Because that was a joke from what was the show about the Purim movie? For your consideration, that was a Jennifer Coolidge
Oh,
joke.
okay.
She's like, as a producer, you have to buy the snacks. Like, so I was just kind of joking with
Yeah, I know. I love. She's just awesome.
So what
Yeah, she's amazing.
if you hadn't gone into acting and like if your career had not flown in that direction, what do you think
Yeah.
your role would have been in the industry? Or what would you have liked
I
your
think.
role if you've been in the industry?
Yeah, no, I think there are a couple of things. I mean, I think I would have attempted perhaps to focus more on production, to
Mm-hmm.
really with on production with an eye to production and direction with an eye towards sort of leaning towards directing and producing. That would have been one side of it. And the other side of it, I think completely different, although it's a performance, but I think I would have really focused on trying to be a voice talent as much as anything else, meaning to be, I mean, I don't know that I have the right sound for it, but that doesn't mean you can't dream. The dream, if I could have been, one of those voice of God announcers that set the stage for something and are the ultimate authority, telling people what to think and what to do. I would have loved to have been one of those
Morgan
voices.
Freeman. Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman is a great example of a voice of God. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
awesome. He opens his mouth and you believe it. When Morgan Freeman speaks, it's the truth.
Yeah.
And that's his, that's his wonderful gift. He's obviously an incredible actor. We love his work as an actor, but that sound, he just speaks from a place of such authority and such confidence and clarity that you just want to go with him wherever he wants to take you.
Totally. And
He's
it's
incredible.
singular. You know it. The moment you hear like two syllables, you're like, oh, all right,
Yes.
we're gonna
Yeah.
settle into Morgan right now. Totally.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about your book. So Prairie Man, My Little House Life and Beyond. It's coming out
Yeah.
on June 25th. So how did this book come about?
Well, so many members of our cast have written books, and it started with Melissa Gilbert, um, and she's written 3 books now. She's working on her 4th book. Melissa Sue Anderson wrote a book. Karen Grassley has written a book. Charlotte Stewart's written a book. Wendy Lou Lee, who was a baby at the time she was, or a toddler at the time she was on the show, she's written 2 books. Jennifer Donati, who played my infant daughter on the show, she's just published a book. Allison Arngrim, who was Nasty Nellie, wrote her book, Confessions of a Prairie Bitch, which has been, just an extraordinary success for her. And I just started thinking, and people were asking me for years, Jordan, when are you going to write a book? I'm at this point, I am nearly the oldest surviving male in this cast. There's one actor who's older than I am, an actor named Stan Ivar, who was in our last 2 seasons, the 9th season and the final movies, and playing a character named John Carter. But, in terms of the actors who are still really strongly involved in the sort of the post-series life of Little House,
Mm-hmm.
I am the oldest surviving male now. And our producer, Kent McCrae, wrote a wonderful book before he passed away about his overall television career, which is a wonderful read, which includes Little House and all the other things he did. But I just started thinking, with the 50th anniversary coming, I wanted to write a book I decided that I was going to try and write a book from my perspective about obviously about sort of the larger things in my life, but where Little House was concerned, it was going to be my take on what the show was for me. And so it's adding to this perspective. Karen, oh, I'm sorry. I think I said, I don't think I said, I guess I said Karen Grassley wrote a book.
Yeah.
But so I just wanted to put a male perspective in from the cast side of the show, a male perspective on the show. And it seemed, as I really started looking at this in 2021, as the pandemic was going on, it really became clear to me that if there was a synergistic time to do this or to have it ready, it would be 2024 when the show is celebrating its 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
So that really became the guiding, once I made the commitment to say, okay, I'm going to craft an outline, I'm going to put my ideas together on what I would have this be. Now I have to back it into 2024. And that became the mission.
Is the audience, because you said like I want to give a male perspective, is the audience for the show like, is it heavily female? Like and so two questions. Yeah. So I'm gonna ask that, is it heavily female? Okay, so you said yes. And secondly, I'm just curious because as a producer, I work with a lot of like horror people who come out of the horror genre, and they, a lot of how they, they do all the cons. Like there's horror cons all over the country. Is there like this like Little House of the Prairie?
Is there a Prairie Con?
Yeah, like is there like right. People like all over the world who are like, oh my God, Little House of the Prairie,
we just did it. We just did an event at the end of March here in Southern California called the Little House on the Prairie 50th anniversary cast reunion and festival, where 18,000 people came over a 3-day period from 27 countries to celebrate Little House with us. And we rebuilt sets. We took people on bus tours back to Big Sky Movie Ranch and put 2-dimensional facades of 12 different buildings in the geolocated as to where they stood on the property. We had tents that could seat 500 people where actors did panels, and there was period music and wonderful food and meet and greet sessions and high-end photography so fans could have pictures. It was an incredible weekend, Jordan, because you just saw on people's faces enormous amounts of joy at being there. You really get a chance to connect with how people love this program. And look, I will say to you and to anybody, Little House was not for everybody. I mean, no show is for everybody. Any show that's for everybody is really for nobody. It's just like there was a target audience. This was geared towards family, obviously based on the Laura Ingalls Wilder novels. It's skewed female, family oriented, from young women to moms. But we also saw, and I always have such empathy for these guys, the husbands and significant others that come along to a Little House on the Prairie event. They come because they love their wives and their girlfriend.
It's like being the husband of like a soap star back when soaps were like, it's like, okay, you're on All My Children, I guess I'll come because I get it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like they're watching their wives flash back to their childhoods or whatever, and some people are watching Little House from the time they're young, very young, to we have audiences of people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who are still watching the program every day. It is a multi-generational experience. And one of the things that was so important to Michael Landon as he created this is he wanted to make a show that families could sit together and watch and talk about.
Yeah.
And, he wanted to teach lessons. He wanted to offer sort of a moral template for how you could behave in the world, how you could occur. he offered audiences the opportunity to consider behavior and decide for themselves how they wanted to fit into different situations. Do they want to be part of the problem, or do they want to be part of the solution? And he offered audiences all of that for over 200 episodes that began running on September 11th, 1974, and have never been off the air since that time. The show is still running in multiple platforms, available on multiple platforms, broadcast and streaming platforms in the United States, and it still airs in over 140 countries around the world.
Oh, wow.
Is
that weird to see yourself dubbed? Is that weird to see yourself dubbed?
And I don't know if I haven't seen that personally, but I have family members who have been on trips, and they're in Italy or they're in France or they're wherever, and they see, the show comes on and they see all of us talking in a different language. It's a trip. It's fun, but I can't say that I've seen that. And I've certainly traveled to other countries, but I haven't been sitting in front of the TV when Little House comes on in a foreign country. But I'd love to see that.
Yeah. So okay. So I know that you have a very, very busy schedule and you have somewhere else to be. So I'm gonna end this with two questions. One.
Okay.
Little House on the Prairie was a very big show when it was on. What was that like to be on a hit TV show? What was that experience like for you?
I think the way it occurs for the actor is, you're in this little bubble where you're making the show. It's once it starts to air, once you're out there, and we can remind people, and people who were there know this, but when we were at our height, we were in this 3-network world where our audiences were anywhere from 15 to 22 million people every week. And so, a lot of people are seeing you. And I think what the big thing is when you're on a series is this visibility that's created overnight. And there's nothing like that. I mean, if you're if you're playing in the Super Bowl, people, you're getting those those are huge numbers. Those are, you're being seen by 60, 70, 80 million people playing in a game. But, short of sports today, there is no event on television that yields those kinds of numbers. Big numbers today are 4 or 5 million people watching,
which would have totally gotten you totally canceled 40 years ago.
Oh yeah, you would have years. Yeah. Today's #1 show would have been nowhere near the air back in those days. I mean, look, I'm sure that I haven't looked at weekly ratings in a long time, and I'm sure
but you're right, because like the
really big number.
But even the Voice is like 5 million people, which again in 1981 would be like, okay, we have to end the show now, you're tomorrow.
You're done.
Yeah,
you're off. Yeah, forget it. Yeah, so it was incredible to be seen, and for a guy whose goal in life as the beginning of this was to be seen and heard, that visibility was really, really powerful for me. I mean, that was the dream, to be seen and heard. So, being on a hit series in that era, you were seen and heard by a lot of people. And that was very satisfying to me.
Yeah. Okay, so my second question is, being a part of this juggernaut, and then after it ends, moving forward, what is that like? Being like, oh my God, like everyone knows who I am, everyone's watching me, and now how do I move forward? Like, what does that feel like?
I think, well, that can be terrifying. That's the instability. That could be.
I want to know how you felt about it, not what it could be.
I was terrified. I was terrified by it. I was terrified by it because I'm thinking to myself, can I possibly equal this or exceed it in something else? And and in an industry, and I don't know if you feel this, it's sort of it's a cliche and a joke, but in an industry where you live around people, you're working with people who are rooting for your failure. Everyone is rooting for everybody's failure because there's such limited landscape, there's such limited real estate that people have to fail in order for other people to get a shot. So, you really are looking for ways, just everyone's rooting for failure and to get their shot. And then they hope that they don't fail as they've rooted for other people to fail. It's hard. It's hard to be in that place. And I really struggled in those years. I mean, I did another series called The New Gidget, where I went from Manly to Moondoggie. I worked on Broadway. I did Into the Woods for Stephen Sondheim. I did an international tour of West Side Story. I did Company with Carol Burnett. I did different things, but there was nothing that had the gravitas of Little House.
Yeah.
And I think it took me years to get comfortable with the fact that that was okay.
Like, were you chasing it for a little bit? Like, kind of like a drug? Like, oh my God, I need to it. Yeah.
Oh God, yes. I mean, Jordan, I was burning through money. I really did struggle. Look, I never turned to alcohol and drugs, and I never got self-destructive in that sense. But I was not a very happy guy during those, as I was struggling to figure out what the next move was. I write a lot about this in the
PRAIRIE MAN.
The chapter is called The Season of Struggle. And, I write a lot about that. And I write about, relationships that were good, a relationship that was horrible, a relationship that ultimately has become sort of the centerpiece of my life that I've been in for, over 25 years. But yeah, that was a very, very hard time. I don't wish that time, and everybody goes through some version of that. I don't wish that on anybody. It sucks. And to come out of the other end and feel like you're okay and be able to accept where you are and be able to make a contribution, perhaps in a different way, but you're able to continue making contributions. When you reach that, if you get to that place, that's a very happy day to reach, because there's life after this thing that defines you. Now, look, Little House will always define me in a sense. I mean, I've said for years that Little House on the Prairie will be in the first line of my obituary. I guarantee it. I mean, if it's not, then someone wrote the wrong obituary. But it should be there. But there have been other things, and I'm okay after years. I'm okay with this niche in television history that continues to be loved and celebrated. And I'm doing really very well in my life. It's like I feel like I have made contributions, and of course, one of the biggest things I do is to continue nurturing Little House, and there's so much joy that comes in that, like this event we did in Simi Valley. And this year we're going to be traveling all over the country, talking about Little House in communities large and small, all over the country. And people have an opportunity to come out and say hi. And we have a chance to say hi to people. And I think it's going to be a very special year as it goes on. And so I'm very gratified by the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy for you, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen with it. So tell us, where can we find you online? And your book is coming
So
out on the 25th of June, right?
of June, right? And it can be you can pre-order it on Amazon or at Barnes and Noble. Prairie Man, My Little House, Life and Beyond. I'm hoping that people, if they really are intrigued by the idea of having the book, that they'll walk into their local bookstore and ask for it, so that the
Oh,
bookstore will order it for them. And I think that's look, it's great to get the book on Amazon. It's really simple, but it would be great to support local bookstores and go into your local bookstore and get it. Um, so there's that. You asked another part of that question. You asked where do you get it? That's where you get it.
but where are
Um,
you? Where are you online? Like, where can we follow you? Where
oh,
can we
that's right,
find out as
online.
you're moving
So
around? Where can we
right,
find
right,
out? Like, oh, you're going to be at a Little
right.
House
Very good,
con
very good.
on
So I
here.
am
Yeah.
Yeah, so I am. So my handle on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and who knows how long TikTok will be around, but I am official Dean Butler on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So you can search me there, and we've been posting videos throughout
But I'm just wondering,
this.
like TikTok, do you do like the TikTok challenges, like you're dancing and things like that?
No, I just feel like such a spastic doing that, Jordan. That I would be embarrassing myself, so much more embarrassing to myself than I'm willing to be. So no, I've done some stupid things on TikTok, and that's really not where my space is. I want to be the genuine, sincere guy who tells a story, and that's where my presence is. There are so many. I can't believe the creative work that gets done on all these platforms. There's some
Isn't it
amazing stuff out
amazing? And like, I don't want to like,
there.
we have to go, but I just, isn't it amazing how, like, well, think about like when you were starting in the business. I think about when I was starting the business. Can you imagine what you might have done if you had a platform like that to
Yeah,
where
I
you
know.
could
I
like
know.
reach the entire world without having a network, without having a
I know.
studio, without having an
I know.
anything? It's
Yeah,
insane.
it's incredible. It's incredible. Wonderful careers have been created in this social environment, and
Yeah.
it's remarkable. And it really is a meritocracy in that sense. I mean, if you're putting enough content out there that grabs and engages people, you can make something happen in this world. It's pretty cool. Um, well, people can judge the content for themselves, but it's made most of it is about Little House. There's stuff about the book. There are other things in my content, but I'm just trying to have a presence out there and give people who love Little House something to look at on a regular basis that reminds them of something and references something that they love.
Yeah.
That's from all this.
Awesome. Well, Dean, it's been such a pleasure getting acquainted with you.
Oh,
It absolutely
Jordan,
has. You're one of-
a great transcontinental conversation.
Indeed. So thank you. And everybody, please check out Prairie Man, My Little House Life and Beyond. It's coming out and get it at your local bookstore on June 25th. And thank you all for listening. We'll see y'all next week on another episode of Showtime with Jordan Van Haslo and Friends, right here on Hot 702.5 FM, Las Vegas. Everyone's favorite radio show and podcast is now available on Spotify. That's right. Showtime with Jordan Van Haslo and Friends, my weekly one-on-one chat with some of the most interesting people I know from the entertainment and the arts communities, can now be streamed on Spotify. That's right. I share real estate with Michelle Obama.